Okay. All right, I believe we are live.
All right.
Okay, so hello everyone. Today we had planned to do a live Q&A with Scott Finkley at Go Mortgage. This is Scott Finkley. He's been in the business a very long time and he has been an asset to me in my business. And I thought that having him on here would be wonderful to answer some of your questions. So, and for those of you who may not know me, I'm Jenny Lindley. I'm the broker and owner here at GL Realty Group. So the first question we got was from Kaylee Davis. Thank you, Kaylee, for submitting a question. Which credit score is used to determine rates? I've seen so many different scores from so many different sources.
That's a really good question. So on a conventional product, the lowest score you can have is a 620. Anything under a 620 won't qualify you on a conventional product. On a conventional loan, as your score drops below a 700, you'll start seeing rate adjustments in a negative manner to the interest rate. These are known as loan level price adjustments by Fannie Mae. So the further the score goes down, the higher the rate goes up. And that's how pricing works on a conventional product. Not to mention the fact, something else to take into consideration is your PMI, also known as private mortgage insurance. On a conventional loan, the organic way of having that removed is putting down 20%. There are other ways to have it removed. You can do a lender paid mortgage insurance or lender buyout of mortgage insurance. But my point is similarly, as the rate goes up, as your credit score goes down on a conventional loan down to 620, the cost of your PMI increases as well accordingly. So those are two things to take into consideration in reference to that question.
Okay, that PMI buyout, that's something that must be new. I hadn't really heard that until this year. So you can actually buy down or buy out your PMI?
You can. So historically, most people would say, well, we have to put 20% down to eliminate PMI. That's correct. But you can do a borrower paid PMI buyout whereby they pay the fee at closing. It's added to their closing costs, and they can put down as little as 5% and have that PMI removed from the loan completely with the buyout. And again, depending on the loan amount, credit score, and loan to value position, that would then determine what that cost of that buyout would be. And in some cases, it makes a whole lot of sense to do that. And you're then at that point entering the loan with no MI. You can also do a lender paid PMI, whereby thought process on it is you're taking a higher rate to not have PMI, but because you don't have PMI, even though the rate's higher, the removal of the PMI still puts you at a lower payment, whereby even though the rate's higher, your payment's lower because you're removing the cost of the PMI through the payment. So those are two other options that you could choose on a conventional product to eliminate the PMI if it, of course, makes sense.
Right. Yeah, I think that's pretty amazing because a lot of people are like, I don't have 20% down, but I don't want to pay PMI either. So that's a great option. I'm glad that you touched on that here. It wasn't in the questions, but it just all rolls together. So good stuff. Another question that Kaylee Davis had was, what's the minimum credit score needed for the lowest interest rate for a conventional mortgage? And you touched on that just now.
The 620, yeah.
The 620, okay.
On conventional. Now on government products and non-QM products, you can go lower than that. On VA and FHA, you can go down to a 580 traditionally, and still get a traditional mortgage for FHA VA. Outside of that, if it goes lower, there are opportunities to still go through those products, through non-traditional products. So realistically speaking, you want to have at least a 580 or higher, but not to say that you couldn't go through a government product, VA, FHA with a lower score than
Okay, so you could go lower than 580?
You can, and in doing so, it becomes a little bit more of a overlay by what would then have someone be eligible for score fell below 580. And in many cases, it comes down to time on the job, debt to income ratios, and compensating factors such as payment shock from what they were paying in rent or mortgage previously to what they're looking at paying now, how many months of reserves they have left over, what their down payment is, and things of that nature. So it is possible that someone could get in a home less than a 580. It just is, it's a little bit more difficult to get that through, but it is possible.
Okay, that's good to know. And what about RD? You said FHA and VA. Does RD fall into those products?
RD follows the conforming conventional guideline with credit score. So their guideline states anything down to a 620 to qualify for RD.
For RD. Okay, and RD, for those of you who may not know, that's where you could finance a home for nothing down, correct? 100%.
100% financing, and on the RD program, the seller can agree, if they choose to do so, to pay up to 6% of the sales price to go towards the buyer's closing costs, taxes, and insurances, whereby could very well make it to be where they may not need much of anything, if anything at all, at closing.
Okay. Yeah, I've been to closings where a buyer has come to the table with no money. You know, everything's been paid out, which is a good segue to the next thing that I had on the list, was closing costs versus down payment. And then we can maybe also talk about, I did a post recently on who pays closing costs. So would you tell us, you know, closing costs versus down payment, it's not the same thing.
It's not, and let me tell you, I've been going on 20 years in the business, and I can tell you that I know for a fact that question from a borrower standpoint, when they ask about that, I really know what they're digging into, because they don't quite understand the terminology as to what goes into that, what curtails those estimates. So your down payment is strictly what you're using to put down towards the sales price. So for instance, on a conventional product, you can put as little as 3% down. Most people are putting 5% or more, but you could do 3% as a first-time home buyer. That would be strictly your down payment. Okay, your closing costs can really be looked upon from a borrower standpoint as a lump of, okay, what is my taxes and insurance is going to cost me at closing, and then what are my hard costs to close. So I know when a borrower asks me what the closing costs are, they're grouping in what am I going to be out of pocket at closing, and outside that, what is my my down payment requirement. So you have your down payment with whatever you're putting down, unless you're doing 100% financing. For the 100% financing program, there is no down payment unless you want to put money down. For all other programs, you have your minimum down payment requirement plus your closing costs, and your closing costs are broken down between the lender fees, the title fees, and third-party costs like an appraisal, credit report, things of that nature. Your prepaids are part of closing and due at closing, and those are taxes and insurances and interest fees collected. So when I have someone asking me, what are my closing costs? I know what they mean is, all grouped in together: taxes, insurances, interest fees collected, and hard costs to close.
Right. What are they going to have to bring to the closing in a form of a check?
Exactly. What is my total out of pocket? So for instance, I'll have many times people say, well, I want to come to the table with, 15 grand. My next question to them is, of that 15 grand, how much are you wanting just as an down payment? That way I can start to correlate how much is left over to cover closing costs, and whether or not any seller assistance might be necessary to make it work.
Right. And that's kind of the question of who pays closing costs. And in my video, I explained that each side is responsible for their own closing cost. A buyer has their closing cost, a seller has their own set of closing costs. It's when we write the contracts whether or not the buyer is going to ask the seller for assistance in closing and whether or not the seller is going to agree to it. So in those, I mean, we see that in what, 90% of our contracts here?
Yeah, a lot, I would agree, a good 90% of them have some form of assistance. And let me tell you, in many cases, that assistance is necessary to close a loan. Because in many cases, you may have limited funds to work with. And, you may have a buyer going in saying, look, this is all I have. And let's just say they're shy, a few thousand, then at that point, we would know going into the contract that they would have to have assistance, to make the loan work because they'd be shy that line. So it is within product guidelines that the seller can agree to pay up towards a certain percentage of the sales price to go towards the borrower's closing costs, taxes, and insurances. Now, a point to make, I've had this come up recently, the seller's assistance cannot cover the down payment.
Right.
So the seller assistance is strictly for the taxes, insurances, and closing costs of the buyer, up to a certain percentage of what the product guideline is.
Yes. Yeah, I know a lot of times we need that to make the deals work, and otherwise, it can't happen. And I think that from a seller standpoint, it's kind of frustrating sometimes, but then I find that in 90% of the time, because it's in 90% of our contracts, we come to a happy medium. Like, we find a win-win situation for buyer and for seller, and we make the deals work. So I think that that's a good thing. I'm going to check my phone real quick to see if anybody, because I don't have it up on my screen right now, to see if anybody has posted any additional questions or is commenting on our video here. I'm gonna go and see what's going on live right now. No, it doesn't look like we have any additional questions at this time. We've got a few people watching. Any additional questions or is commenting on our. So I think we're good. Did you have anything else that you'd like to talk about?
I have a couple of new changes that I thought might be of interest for everyone, realtor, borrower, anyone looking to buy, really sell at this point. Come January 1st, the conventional loan limit has now upped from 484,350 to 510,400. That's a big deal. So for those of you who don't understand what that means, anything that you finance up to 510,400, as long as your loan amount does not exceed that, you stay within the conventional conforming limits, which means you're going to get a better rate. Okay. If you go over a loan amount of 510,400 come January 1st, then it puts you into a jumbo loan situation, which is a completely different ballgame. So this is a big deal. I remember when I started the business, the max conforming loan limit was much lower. So this is really nice. In addition to that, the FHA loan limit is increased now as well as of January 1st. And that is actually going to go up to 331,760 for a single family.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and then a couple other notes. On a 2-unit primary residence FHA product, it goes up to 424,800, 513,450 on a 3-unit, and 638,100 on a 4-unit. A lot of people don't realize you can purchase multifamily units on an FHA product with as little as 3.5% down and finance quite a bit and still keep it conforming. It's really nice.
Wow, I didn't know that. So on a 3-unit, you could still do FHA. And is that if you are owner occupying one of those units?
Correct. So it would be an FHA product, and yes, you would have to occupy one as your primary, but you could have the other 3 as rentals.
As rentals. Wow. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that. That's awesome. Yeah. And even with the raising the loan limit to the 500, I mean, we've seen houses in St. Charles Parish get close to those numbers with the new construction. I mean, the prices are so much higher. So raising that limit to allow all of that is pretty good.
It's definitely going to open the doors up for the accommodation of our appreciating market and keeping people in that conforming loan limit. I know from a public point of view that may sound unfamiliar to them, but that's a huge deal on our part.
Yeah, I think so. I can see the benefits immediately to keep the interest rates lower on those high sale price properties.
Yep.
Okay, great. That's great stuff, Scott. Is there anything else that you would like to say? I didn't see any questions listed, so I don't think we have any others. We can definitely do this again.
Oh yeah, be happy to. There's so much we can talk about, really, as well as I do, easily on, weekly, bi-weekly basis, and just things that kind of come up. And still to this day, I find people thinking that they may not qualify, or thinking that they need 20% down, when in fact they did. So, the first things first is get with your realtor and get with your lender and get pre-qualified, find out what your payments are going to be. Make sure you're looking at the right price point before you go look at homes.
Right.
And that'll help make the transition much more seamless.
Yeah, definitely get with your realtor, get with the lender. I mean, it goes back to the closing costs too. I mean, we can't make an offer and know that you need closing costs unless you don't know those numbers already.
Yes.
You don't want to get into a situation where we have an accepted contract and then the question is, well, where's the closing cost? Well, all those things need to come out up front, and you're the person that they need to talk to. So.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. This was really great. I'm going to share this in a couple of other spots, and I hope this was super helpful for a lot of you. If you have any additional questions, please comment on this video or send us a private message. You can find Scott on Facebook at Scott Finkley. It's Go Mortgage. I have all his personal information, so if you really want to talk to him, just call me. So, Scott, I hope you have a great day. Thank you again for this. I think this was amazing. I enjoyed it.
Thank you for having me anytime.
Yeah, thanks. Talk to you
All right,
later.
have a good day.
You too.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.